Good afternoon, and welcome to Nexora News. Here are today's top stories. The conflict between the United States and Iran continues to escalate, with fresh strikes raising fears over oil shipments through the Red Sea. Donald Trump says the U.S.-Saudi nuclear agreement will now depend on Saudi Arabia normalizing relations with Israel. A BBC investigation examines the missile strike on a primary school in Minab that killed 156 people, including 120 children, on the first day of the war. Nearly 5 months later, the United States has yet to release the findings of its investigation into the deadly attack. Those are the headlines. Now for the news in full.
First, though, we're beginning with an investigation. It was back on the very first day of the US-Israeli war in Iran that a missile hit a primary school in Minab in the south of the country, killing 156 people, 120 of them children. Almost 5 months on, the US has still not released the findings of its investigation into the tragedy, although media reports of a preliminary US military assessment do suggest that they were likely to have been responsible. It's a story which the BBC has been doggedly trying to pursue from the get-go. Just to take our State Department correspondent, Tom Bateman, he's directly asked face-to-face questions about the strike over the last few months to President Donald Trump, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and early on in the war, to Pete Hegseth, the Defence Secretary.
Thank you. Come back with the BBC. Can you give us an update on what the administration knows, what you know now about the reported strike on a girls' school in southern Iran on Saturday?
All I can say is that we're investigating that. We, of course, never target civilian targets, but we're taking a look and investigating that. Red tie in front.
Just on the basis that with the information you would have, your reconnaissance abilities, ability to gather information, I mean, it's several days on now. So is there any clarity on whose munition this was?
We're investigating it.
Well, that was back in March. In May, when Tom asked President Trump for an update about the attack, he was told that it was still under investigation and that the BBC was a fake outfit, as he put it. So what do we know? BBC World Service's senior international correspondent, Nawal Al-Maghafi, has been given rare access to visit the school site. Her report contains distressing testimony.
In the blazing heat, the search continues. Months after a missile hit the Shajara Tayyibah school in Minab, people here are still looking for what remains of those who were killed. The authorities were keen for us to visit because this attack has become a big part of Iran's case to the world. Local officials say 156 people died here, including 120 children.
I've been teaching here for 6 years, and I'm a first-grade teacher.
We meet Amina Nadimi. She leads us through what's left of the building. The walls that remain are bright, with painted balloons, flowers, and children's writing. She points up to where the girls' classrooms once were, and to where they collapsed into the boys' classrooms below.
You can't call it a school. Here there are only walls that smell of death, grief, and the blood that was shed here.
Parents, desperate to find their children, arrived to a horrific scene after the attack in February.
I thought, why are they coming here? There's no one inside. Everyone has fled. I didn't know they were all under the rubble.
Reza was one of the first emergency responders to arrive.
I saw one of my relatives. He was begging that just found my child, found my son. I couldn't tell her that your son is not alive.
Experts say evidence indicates it was a US strike that hit the Shajara Tayyibah school in Minab, southern Iran. They've also questioned whether the school was hit because of its proximity to an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps site. The US is yet to release the findings of its own inquiry. Many had hoped foreign intervention would bring political change after months of bloody anti-regime protests. Reza's adamant there was no military activity in the area.
The place of the army and everything that was near here is changed. There wasn't any army or anyone that be related to this regime around here.
I'm walking around the cemetery where many of the children killed in the Minab school attack have been buried, and around me there are so many families that have come to visit their young children. They come here every day. I can see some of the siblings of those that were killed kissing the photos of their loved ones that stand by their grave. There are some that are so young that they're playing in between the different tombstones. There is row after row after row of graves. It's a really sobering place to be. Mersea lost her 9-year-old daughter, Satesh, in the attack.
The school had gone. There was only the smell of smoke and children's hair. I saw a hand, a foot. They had been torn to pieces.
Like many of the parents here, her grief has become intertwined with anger.
May Trump be destroyed. May he drown in the blood of these children. And may he be afflicted with such suffering that everyone hears about it.
In a country deeply divided over its authoritarian leadership, the strike on this school has united many in grief. A stark reminder that every war brings with it a devastating human cost.
Nawal al-Maghafi reporting from southern Iran. She was there on condition that none of her material is used on the BBC's Persian service. These restrictions apply to all international media organisations operating in Iran. Well, listening to that has been Charles Blaha, the former long-serving director of the US State Department's Office of Security and Human Rights. He retired in 2023. Mr. Blaha, thank you for your time here on NewsAir. Given that you're retired, I presume you don't quite know whether it's the case of whether this investigation just hasn't been completed or whether it's being sat on. But given that it's been almost 5 months, I mean, is that a sort of reasonable length of time that one might imagine it would take for an investigation, or would you have expected it to have been released by now?
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for following this story. And to answer your question, it's pretty clear that this investigation, that the government is sitting on it. For a long time, as you reported in your lead-in piece, the administration's line on this, both from Secretary Hegseth and from the president, it has been, this is under investigation. As time passed, that no longer became credible. And given the resources at the central commands that the central command has, it's likely that the central command had the complete picture of what happened within 24 hours. But that under investigation line became increasingly less credible. And now we're hearing more statements that indicate that there is some sort of an investigation that has been complete, but it's being reviewed. That is another delay mechanism. Why does this need to be reviewed? Who's reviewing it, and what's the timeline to end the review? This is just another delay mechanism.
Could it be argued from within the Defense Department that, look, the war is continuing? We may be committed to releasing the results of a full investigation, but we wouldn't want to release anything now which might tell the Iranians, what sort of intelligence we're working on, how we plan our targeting of certain sites, things that could aid the enemy, in other words.
That is really not credible. If you're talking about the mentality that Secretary Hegseth has, his mentality is simply that Iran is evil and that he won't broach any criticism of United States forces. Multiple credible sources over the past weeks and months have established that this was a U.S. strike. It was a Tomahawk missile. And although some of the details vary, they've established that the U.S. used outdated intelligence. What I hope has happened since then is I hope that the Central Command has revised its targeting procedures so that they don't use outdated intelligence. But I do think, at a minimum, what has to happen is the U.S. has to acknowledge that this was a U.S. strike. We have to apologize for it. And we do need to pay reparations to the victims and to their families. All that can be done without compromising any operational details.
Right. And just in terms of how far, I mean, that's the sort of moral case, if the US, as many indications are, was responsible for sort of saying, look, we made a terrible mistake here. How far is it potentially a matter of legal jeopardy if that mistake was made on the basis of, I mean, put sort of malice or intent to one side, but on the basis of recklessness?
Well, that's actually the key question, isn't it? Because international humanitarian law requires an attacking party for this kind of a strike to distinguish between a civilian target and a military target, and to take all feasible precautions to ensure that there are no civilian deaths, or at least not excess civilian deaths. Given the United States' the Trump administration's stance on international law, I would not expect that it would submit to any international mechanisms.
And just from your experience, I know that you were in state rather than the Pentagon, but how much disquiet do you think there might be within the military over this whole process?
Well, I think there is some. I think there are, despite Secretary Hegseth's dismantling of the civilian protection architecture within the Defense Department, I do believe that there still are people in the Defense Department who care about these kinds of things. However, I do think that there is fault up the chain of command for approving a strike based on outdated intelligence. That should never have happened. And I hope that the Defense Department has learned from this. I hope the Defense Department has changed its targeting procedures, and I hope the Defense Department has taken steps to replace some of the personnel, the civilian harm prevention experts who have been let go.
Charles Blaha, former director of the US State Department's Office of Security and Human Rights, thank you very much for joining us. You're with NewsHour. It's live from the BBC. I'm Tim Franks. We began the programme hearing about that attack on the school in southern Iran, not far from the critical waterway of the Strait of Hormuz. There's another vital narrow shipping channel the other side of the Gulf at the southern end of the Red Sea. It's called the Bab al-Mandab Strait. And it's where the Yemen-based Iran-backed Houthi movement says that it's attacked 2 Saudi oil tankers, which has led to another surge in oil prices. Elizabeth Kendall is the president of Girton College, Cambridge, and a Yemen expert across the area. How important is the Bab al-Mandab to Saudi Arabia and its oil shipments?
The Bab al-Mandab, which is the main entrance to the Red Sea and hence up into Suez on the western side of the Arabian Peninsula, is incredibly important. Prior to the Houthis' first beginning, their strikes on the Red Sea at the end of 2023, so this is the first time round, roughly 17,000 ships would go through that route every year, and it accounted for about 12% of global seaborne trade. So it was incredibly important. Subsequently, its importance lessened a little as ships started to take longer routes, but it has been navigable pretty much in 2026. So this is quite a surprise, and it's particularly painful for the Saudis because with Hormuz being closed on the eastern side of the Arabian Peninsula, they had managed to redirect around about 70% of their crude oil exports across the peninsula to come out on the Red Sea port of Yanbu. So if that now is also under threat, that puts a very tight squeeze on them. And it's worth remembering that if the Bab al-Mandab is closed by the Houthis, then that means that the VLCCs, the very large crude carriers, can't get up to Yanbu because these massive tankers are too big to get through Suez, so they can't enter from the north.
Elizabeth, I do want to ask you, if I may, just about this other development that's happened just as we've been about to come on air today, which is an early morning social media post from Donald Trump saying that this nuclear accord that was signed yesterday between the US and Saudi over the US providing them with nuclear technology so they can produce their own nuclear power, that it is contingent on Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords, which is this essentially normalizing relations with Israel, which is something Saudi Arabia, has been holding out against, and certainly since October 2023 and the aftermath of the Hamas attacks. Just tell me what you read into this.
It sounds as though President Trump is trying to row back on the big announcement of a nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia. It sounds like he's now trying to find a way that's an elegant exit from anything too serious on that front. And therefore, he's mentioned that Saudi has to sign up to the Abraham Accords, which Saudi has very clearly stated that it won't do without a solution for Palestine being in place. Saudi has its own conditions. And perhaps it's worth stating here that the significance of the Abraham Accords tends to have been perhaps overstated by the Trump administration that brought them in originally. You have to put them into context. In that there are around 2 billion Muslims globally and 49 Muslim majority countries. Only 4 of those countries have signed up to the Abraham Accords. So here it sounds like another attempt to make a transactional deal with Saudi Arabia. You can have your nuclear deal if you sign up to the Abraham Accords. But not everyone works in quite such a transactional way. And I'd be interested to see how Saudi reacts and whether it sticks to its own conditions of a solution for Palestine.
Is London becoming safer? Drones and e-bikes are changing the fight against crime. Imagine being tracked from the sky by a drone or chased down by an e-bike. It's not a movie. It's happening on the streets of London. The Metropolitan Police say they're now arresting around 1,000 suspects every month using these tactics, helping cut neighborhood crimes such as theft, robbery, and burglary by 15%. Even more surprising, phone thefts in London's West End have fallen by half since June last year. So what's behind this dramatic change? And how are drones, e-bikes, and frontline officers making London's streets safer? Stay with us as we bring you the full story.
And when you look at our charge rate, we have momentum, which we're not going to give up on. We've turned the corner on volume crime over the last couple of years, and for it to be down by sort of 14-15% across London, and particularly down, we're celebrating in Camden here today with the local town centre team, where it's down here by a quarter. As you say, Westminster by more than a third. These are massive, massive reductions. And all this is supported by technology. We're using drones, we're using facial recognition cameras to get wanted people off the streets. We're going to be relentless on this. We're going to keep going, and we'll keep making progress regardless of the resourcing pressures we face.
Yeah, can you afford to be relentless?
So you have to get more focused and sharper. Listen, I don't like running a police force that's 3,300 smaller than it was 3 years ago. But whatever monies government decide to give us, we will be as determined and focused as we possibly can do. Today I want to focus on celebrating this massive progress our teams are making in terms of bringing down crime. Of course, I'm sure
given what you said before, that the cuts will have to come in September, that we are very nearly in September.
We're looking at the effect of, as our plans have to change over the course of the year, as we're not able to use the technology we were hoping to, we're looking at the effect of that, and you'll hear about that in due course.
How concerned are you about the state of the criminal justice system? It's okay, your officers going out and nicking people, getting them off the streets, but the reality is that many of them won't face trial, and the victims have to wait for justice for something like 3 or 4 years. Yeah,
I'm really, really troubled and concerned by the fragility of the justice system at the moment. This has built up over a long time. It's not something government can fix overnight. But in London, we've got hundreds of cases that are now listed for trial in 2030. We pause and think 2030, that's a crazy amount of time to hold a victim in abeyance whilst waiting for justice.